to this video. So to begin making this monostrap Bubu, the first thing you're going to do is you're going to draft a bodice like I have done here. Now this is the shoulder bust to under bust length. This is the half cut. I'm going to drop a link to a video showing you how to draft the bodice in case you don't know how to, but make sure you draft it on a fold so that you can spread it flat like so. Now after you spread it, as for this neckline width and the neckline depth, for the width of the neckline I use 3.5, the depth I use 3.5. Alright, so for the width 3.5, when you open it, that should give you around 7. Alright, so when you've done that, remember, link is in the description. I want you to connect one side of your neckline. So from here, I want you to connect the middle of your neckline to the armhole. Alright, because this is a mono strap, and then if you use this method, you don't need to go ahead taking your tape around trying to figure out how your tape should go in order to make it sit properly, because once you draft the bodice using the measurements, all should be well. As you've seen, I've kept 1 inch of allowance by the side here. If you want, you can keep less, like half an inch or something like that. Alright, so let me connect the line. Alright, as you've seen, after drilling the first line, it looked a bit too sharp, so I ruled one next to here in order to smoothen it out a bit more. And that's it. This is basically all you need to do on your on the bodice. Now, next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to bring over the fabric and give you instructions on what to do. Now, this is the fabric I'm working with. This is chiffon. First of all, this is 4 yards of fabric, in case for those of you that always like to know how many yards I use, this is 4 yards of fabric. The next thing you're going to need to know, you're going to need to know your dress length, alright? So you take your dress length, you multiply it times 2, and you add your allowance to it. So at the bottom of my hem, after I've placed the dress length, I like having an allowance of 2 inches for hemming at the bottom. So how I'm going to do this is like this. You're going to pick up the fabric. Like I said, this is 4 yards. So I'm going to first of all measure out the dress length twice. The dress length I'm working with is 60, so I'm going to come from the beginning of the fabric and I'm going to measure out 60 twice. Alright, so this is 1. Then I'm going to measure out 60 again. The first 60 I measured was for the front, and the 60 I'm measuring now is for the back. Now I've measured the second 60. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to do the same thing with my allowance. Remember, I told you at the end of the front I want to have 2 inches. At the end of that's at the hem of the back, I want to have 2 inches. So 2 plus 2 is equals to 4. I'm going to now take 4 inches for my allowance. Alright, now when you found that, I want you to make a notch and rip the chiffon all the way down. Be careful, in case your fabric doesn't do this. You need to do this, measure it on the other side and then use the scissors and cut it, but my fabric can rip like this, so I'm going to go ahead to do this. Alright, so being that we've cut it the way we have, you can see this other fabric here can be used to make a matching scarf if you want something like that. Alright, the next thing you're going to do is you're going to get your fabric. So you're going to come to the end that we just ripped. Alright, so over here, this is the end that we just ripped, and you will take it and match it with the other side of the end of the fabric. So the side that's supposed to be the hem. You see this? You're going to make them match like I have done, place them on the same level, and then I want you to straighten out your fabric. Alright, so straighten out the fabric and then place it on your table. Make sure that you take your time and lay it flat. Make sure that there are no folds under the fabric when you drop it, so that you don't have any issue of one side being longer. So make sure it's perfectly flat. Alright, so now what I'm going to do, you're going to take this pattern and you're going to place it on top. Alright, now when you're placing it, I want you to keep a space of 5 inches on that edge. Alright, so I'm going to show you how to taper the whole thing in, but you should have a little flake, just very little, on the side that has the off shoulder. But if you don't want it to have the flake, you can simply push this to the end and that's fine. But just so I have, because all the excess, most of the excess will be pushed to the side that has the shoulder, I want this other side to have a little flake so that it's a bit balanced and it doesn't look like all the bulk is all on the other side. So that's why I'm keeping this 5 inches here. So you see, measure 5 inches away from the edge and then pin it down. Also, at this point over here, make sure to pin down the shoulder right at the edge. Don't worry about the shoulder slope, because I don't want to have any cuts at the shoulder. That slope there doesn't really matter, since the whole thing is it's a soft fluid fabric, so we will not have any sharp edges simply because we didn't slope the shoulder. So pin it down there, and I'm going to pin it down at this end as well. So now the next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to cut this off shoulder out. Alright, so the monostrap, this is when we create a shoulder on one side and the other side without. So I'm going to make a cut here, and then from this edge I'm going to taper out to the bottom. Alright, so the top here won't have that 5-inch excess, but as I slowly taper out the side and all the way down, it will simply open up to that 5 inches. Okay, so just a little flare on that side. Alright, so what I'm going to do next is I'm going to pin this down some more, because the next place where we're going to do some work is on this other side of the shoulder. Alright, so now the next step, I'm going to rearrange the position of everything. That's why I said put some more pins. Alright, so I've arranged everything here. Let me explain something to you. Now you've seen that the other side there is no sleeve at all, and on this side the fabric just continues all the way down. So you're going to need two measurements. You're going to need you're going to need one measurement. That's your sleeve length. So you're going to need to take your sleeve length not from the neck here where this is starting from, but from here. Alright, as though you are taking a regular sleeve length. And for me that number is 23 inches. I'm going to place 23 here and see where it stops here. Now the next thing I want to do, I'm going to need an excess of 10 inches. Now if you see at the shoulder of the dress that you've seen and on the thumbnail and the one that I made, you can see that there are pleats right up here at the shoulder. So there are pleats from here a lot around the shoulder that now go all the way down to form drapes. So those pleats here, that's why I need that 10 inches in front of here. That's why I'm going to keep an extra 10 inches in front of here. So here I have an extra, after where my sleeve stops, I have an extra of around 13 inches. Alright, I have an extra of around 13 inches. If you want, you can go ahead to cut this part here all the way down, but I'm going to leave it there because for me, at the end of the sleeve, I want to have an elastic. You can make this without. There are some styles where they just start sewing from here, going all the way down and leave a hole here. But for me, I want to have an elastic, and that's what I'm going to use part of that 3 inches for. So to create the points where the elastic will sit, you are going to need a few measurements. The first measurement you are going to need is your wrist measurement. For this measurement here, the wrist measurement is around 6.7. I'm going to approximate that to 7. So 7 divided by 2 is 3.5, and then I'm keeping an extra 5 inches for allowance. That's 10 inches, but my elastic will bunch up everything and make it sit on the wrist. So that means I'm cutting around 8.5 inches. I hope that's clear. The first 3.5 inside that 8.5 is the wrist divided by 2, and an extra 5 inches. 5 plus 3.5 is equals to 8.5. At the end of the sleeve here, I'm going to make a notch at 8.5. Alright, after I've made this notch, I'm going to cut into this notch. I'm going to cut 2 inches into the notch. Alright, I've cut 2 inches into the notch. The next thing I'm going to do from here, I'm going to simply cut here straight down at this point. Alright, I don't need the excess at all those points. I'm going to simply just cut here all the way down. This point here, I'm going to hem it. You see on the sewing machine, I'm going to hem it, and that's where I'm going to install my elastic. And all this excess here, I will gather it and make sure by the time I'm done, by the time I put my elastic and gather everything, I should have a distance of from this edge here to here of roughly 25. So the first part we are working on is the space I kept for the sleeve. Now before I cut in deep by 2 inches, but I added an extra inch here so that by the time I fold, it balances out. So that means when you're cutting in that place where I cut in 2 inches before I ripped here down, you're going to have to cut an extra 1 inch there. So instead of 2, cut in 3 before you start cutting down. I hope that that's clear. So I'm going to go ahead to run a line here that would hold this in place for us to install our elastic. Alright, so the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to install my elastic. This elastic here is 1 inch elastic, so it's 1 inch, it has a width of 1 inch. And I have a needle and thread here. I've made a knot at the end. I'm going to simply, and then I'm going to use this. I'm using the head of the needle, so the blunt side of the needle. So when I pass the needle through and the end of my elastic is at the edge, I'm going to first make a stitch to just hold the elastic in place at the end over here. So with that, I have formed my sleeve on this side. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to come over to the neckline. All right, so I'm coming to the wrong side. This is the wrong side of the fabric over here. You're going to come over to the neckline. All right, this notch I made here, I made at the apex of the neckline, right here, right at the middle. So that's why I have this notch here. And the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to stitch the side. So you can see this is the side of the shoulder over here. Sorry, excuse me. So you can see this is the peak of the highest point of the shoulder here. This is the slope for the monostrap. Remember, you kept 1 inch of allowance on the side, so I'm going to start with 1 inch over here and I'll taper out to ½ inch as I stitch down. All right, so that's what I'm going to do now to seal off this side. Alright, so after you have made that stitch at the bottom here, you can take it and put it on, get a feel for it, because after this we're going to be hemming around the neckline, and once we hem it, that's the point of no return. So this is a good part. This is a good time to throw it on a mannequin or throw it on yourself and see how it looks before you proceed. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to hem around the neck. So you see this opening that we have here, we're now going to hem around it. I'm going to hem fold ½ inch twice, and then I'm going to simply stitch around. Alright, so after I stitched the neck, I went over to my ironing table and I ironed everything. The next thing I wanted to do, I wanted to open up the neckline. Alright, and make sure that before you open this up, that you fold here. You see this? You come to the joining at the bottom, alright, and straighten the top, lay it flat. Make a mark at the apex of the shoulder, and then we're now going to start pleating from here, heading straight down. Alright, when you are coming down like so, you want to make sure that you check and see that you have not gathered so much until you don't have anything left. So for me, I'm going to make pleats from here going straight down. So I'm going to start from here and start heading down. When I make some pleats, I'm going to place my tape and measure and see if I still have around 25, 26. All right, make sure that this does not become too short, that you don't pleat so much until the distance from the shoulder doesn't become too short. So you see the shoulder that we have here, all right? You see the shoulder that we have here, it was around 4 inches. We have consumed 1 inch when bending the neck here ½ inch twice. so we have 3 inches left. We are going to add that 3 inches to your total sleeve length. The sleeve length we're working with, remember, is 23, and here we have up to 30, I think 37 or so. So we're going to need to gather all of this to 26 inches. 26 inches, because 23 plus 3 inches is equal to 26. You can make it slightly longer at maybe 28. All right, so let's start to pleat. Make sure that you don't pleat until the whole thing becomes too short. Alright, so I've done it and I stopped around 27 and a half, so almost 28 inches. Alright, next thing we're going to do, and that's all for gathering the shoulder area. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to turn it inside out. I'm going to stitch the allowance from here all the way to the hem. So I'm going to start from here, the edge, and I'm going to stitch half an inch all the way down. Alright. Alright, as you can see, that's after you run that side. This is a very easy beginner's project that you can make to get yourself started, or a very nice bubu you can make to use for a semi-formal event. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to simply hem the bottom of the bubu. Once I make this stitch, I'm done. If you've watched this far, thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next video. Do have a lovely day. Bye bye.